Good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm Bob Papinetti, President and CEO of the Literacy Cooperative, and welcome to our 2021 Read Across America celebration. As people are joining the session, and to give us an opportunity to learn about who's in the audience, we have 4 questions that will appear on your screen, and we'll take a look at the results together. Unfortunately, if you're joining this session via phone, you will not be able to participate in the survey, but you will hear the results. All right, question number 1. Where in the world are you today? I'm actually sitting here at the Cleveland Public Library main branch in downtown Cleveland. It's beautiful. I'm overlooking the entrance of the front door on Superior Avenue. All right, looks like most of our people are in Cuyahoga County, or we have several that are in Ohio, but outside the county, and 6 others that are somewhere outside of Ohio. So welcome, welcome, welcome all of you. On to question 2. How many items do you think are in the Library of Congress? Okay, well, looks like some folks have done some research on the Library of Congress. We have 171 million items. I'm so looking forward to learning about some of those items in the library today. Question number 3. How often do you use your local public library? Okay, we have quite a few library goers. I'm not surprised. Hopefully, after the conversation today, we'll see the usage increase. On to number 4. Have you been to the Library of Congress? Oh, it's about a 50-50. Quite a few people have been there, but quite a few others haven't. I was one that clicked no. So hopefully, again, after this session, I'm going to want to go to the Library of Congress. As we're getting started, we have some housekeeping tips for you. After the conversation with Dr. Hayden and Director Thomas, there'll be some time for question and answer. So if you would type your questions in the chat box or the Q&A window, we'll try to get to those questions after their session. Also, if you're having any technical difficulties, contact Mackenzie Bartels. Her email is at the bottom of the screen. And as always, we hope you'll follow us on your social media platforms at Literacy Co-op. I am really thrilled about today's session. I mean, we have the top librarian in the country, in the United States, with Dr. Carla Hayden, who leads the Library of Congress. And we have the top librarian in the city of Cleveland with Director Felton Thomas, who leads Cleveland Public Library. This event certainly couldn't happen without the generous support of so many of our sponsors. Thank you, PNC, for being our gold sponsor this year, and also our several silver sponsors, the Third Federal Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, the Heights Family Foundation, the Center for Community Solutions, and our very dedicated and passionate Literacy Cooperative Board of Trustees. Thank you all of you for supporting this event and also supporting the work of the Literacy Cooperative. This event, this celebration happens in conjunction with Read Across America Day, which is celebrated annually on March 2nd across the country. We had a number of things that happened here locally on March 2nd that I'll talk a little bit about later. But while we've been celebrating Read Across America Day for many years, it's just been since 2017 that we've been inviting a special guest speaker to join us for these sessions. In 2017, we had Dr. Suskin, author of 30 Million Words, Building a Child's Brain, who shared some important information about the science of brain development and the importance of talking and reading to babies from the moment they're born. In 2018, Sharon Darling, founder and president of the National Center for Families Learning, shared experiences around the benefits of a two-generational approach to serving families. In 2019, Dr. Perry Klass, pediatrician, author, and national medical director of Reach Out and Read, which talked about how pediatricians are helping to build a love of reading in children and families. And last year, in our first virtual Read Across America event, Megan Cox-Gurdon, author of The Enchanted Hour, The Miraculous Power of Reading Aloud in the Age of Distraction, talked about the beautiful benefits of parents and children reading together. You can certainly see a theme here: children, reading, parents, families, which made Dr. Carla Hayden a pretty obvious choice to ask to be our 5th Read Across America speaker. I actually first learned about Dr. Hayden when she interviewed Dolly Parton on the induction of Dolly Parton's book, Coat of Many Colors, into the Library of Congress. This book represented the 100 millionth book mailed by Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program. For those of you who don't know much about Imagination Library, it's an amazing program where children under the age of 5 get a brand new age-appropriate book in the mail every month until they're 5 years old. And it's absolutely free. We know this program fosters a love of reading in children at a very young age and results in families reading more together. The Literacy Cooperative leads this program in Cuyahoga County, where we have 30,000 children currently enrolled. I noticed during the survey that we have many people that live in Ohio, but not in Cuyahoga County. Thanks to the hard work of First Lady of Ohio, Fran DeWine, and the Ohio Governor's Imagination Library program, this program, Imagination Library, is available to every child in the state of Ohio under the age of 5, and it's free. If you have a child under the age of 5 or know someone who does, please encourage them to sign up for this program. It's wonderful, and I truly believe it's going to be a game changer for us here in Cuyahoga County. The other thing Imagination Library does is it allows us to connect to families, where we could use our two-generational strategy, because the research is pretty clear that if we consider the needs of the entire family, the outcomes for each individual member of that family is going to be improved. I hope you'll visit our website at literacycooperative.org to learn more about our work and the work of some of our partners. I mentioned earlier Read Across America Day, March 2nd, some of the activities that happened. We had a number of our partners that we worked with who conducted a variety of activities, from live author book readings to sing-alongs to balloon demonstrations and puppet play, to just emphasize the love of reading with their families. We also asked families to send a photograph of them reading themselves or with their children to, again, show the happiness that comes with reading. You can see all the smiles and happy faces here. I love to see the children reading. I love to see parents and children reading together, because we know so many good things happen when parents and children are reading together. I mentioned PNC several times this afternoon, with good reason. They're our gold sponsor this year, and actually since 2017, when we've had a guest speaker, they've been our gold sponsor every year. Pat Pastore, president of PNC, and his team are very visible in the community, and they're the type of partner and funder who want to know how they can help make our jobs better. And so I'd like to introduce Aaron Daimling, Vice President of Client and Community Relations at PNC, to introduce our 2 speakers today. Aaron?
Bob, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and join you in learning from our keynote today. I'm Aaron Daimling, Director of Client and Community Relations at PNC here in Cleveland. At PNC, we believe it's never too early to invest in a child's future, because when they thrive, the future becomes brighter. This is the basis for Grow Up Great, PNC's multi-year program focused on developing curious young minds and serving children birth to 5, particularly underserved children, by empowering caregivers and supporting their teachers. Literacy is so important to this work, which is why we're so proud to be here to sponsor the Read Across America celebration today. We are joined today by Felton Thomas, a close friend of the Literacy Cooperative, who will moderate a conversation with Dr. Carla Hayden. Felton was appointed director of the Cleveland Public Library in 2009. Since then, he has positioned the Cleveland Public Library as a community deficit fighter and launched initiatives aimed at addressing community needs in the areas of technology, education, and economic development. Felton earned his undergraduate degree in psychology from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and his master's in library science from the University of Hawaii. His awards and accomplishments include being named a mover and shaker by the Library Journal and acting as a fellow in the Urban Library Council's Executive Leadership Institute. He is a past president of the Public Library Association and a 2010 graduate of Leadership Cleveland. Our keynote, Dr. Carla Hayden, was sworn in as the 14th Librarian of Congress on September 14th, 2016. Hayden, the first woman and the first African American to lead the National Library, was nominated to the position by President Barack Obama on February 24th, 2016. And her nomination was confirmed by the US Senate on July 13th of that year. Prior to her latest post, she served as CEO of the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Maryland. Hayden was nominated by President Obama to be a member of the National Museum and Library Services Board in January 2010 and was confirmed to that post by the Senate in June 2010. Prior to joining the Pratt Library, Hayden was Deputy Commissioner and Chief Librarian of the Chicago Public Library from 1991 to 1993. She was an assistant professor for library and information science at the University of Pittsburgh from 1987 to 1991. Hayden was Library Services Coordinator for the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago from 1982 to 1987. And she began her career with the Chicago Public Library, serving as the Young Adult Services Coordinator and as a Library Associate and Children's Librarian. Hayden was president of the American Library Association from 2003 to 2004. In 1995, she was the first African American to receive Library Journal's Librarian of the Year award in recognition of her outreach services at the Pratt Library, which included an after-school center for Baltimore teens offering homework assistance in college and career counseling. Hayden received a BA from Roosevelt University and an MA and PhD from the Graduate Library School of the University of Chicago. Please help me welcome Dr. Carla Hayden and Felton Thomas.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to PNC for all that you do to help support literacy. I also want to thank Bob Papanetti and the folks at Literacy Cooperative for asking me to moderate this program. And actually, I kind of begged them for this opportunity to interview Dr. Hayden. For those, and I'll just say this, for many on the line who have had any contact with Dr. Hayden, they know the role that she's played in bringing so many folks in the library world, especially people of color, giving them access and opportunities and mentorship to move us forward. And so to that, I say thank you, Dr. Hayden.
Oh, thank you, Felton.
Welcome. This is a great opportunity for Read Across America's celebration, talk about reading, and to talk a little bit about the things that you're doing at the Library of Congress. But I want to kind of go back, because we're talking about reading. So let's go back to you as a young child and your first experience, like that kind of thought in your mind about the first time that reading really caught on with you.
I was very fortunate, and Felton, I have to say that the slogan or the sign behind you, the People's University, really encapsulates what public libraries are for anyone and for self-fulfillment. And so it's wonderful to see that. And I was fortunate to have family members who love to read, but also in grammar school, and that really dates me, I was right across from a branch library, a storefront branch library. And my big thing was to be able to go into that branch library and just be able to pick out anything I wanted. I had a library card First time I had something with my name on it. And at that time, books were, and still are in one way, a window to the world. But I had never really seen and loved books, never really seen myself until a librarian, when I was about 7, put a book in my hand, and I talk about it often, Bright April, that had a little girl who looked like me, who was 7 years old. She was brown, she had pigtails, she was a brownie, and that's when I learned about library fines, and we'll talk about that later, what an impediment. But I love that book because I could see myself reflected in a book. And so libraries and reading just were part of my life from an early age, and as you can see, still.
So you go on, you graduate from college, and you're like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And all of a sudden you become this accidental librarian.
And that it truly was accidental. And that's and with having librarians be visible, like you're visible in Cleveland and in the community, it shows young people what they can be. And so I did graduate from Roosevelt University, a very public service university with Eleanor Roosevelt actually gave the name and sanctioned that, with a degree in political science and history, and didn't know if I was going to go into law or what, and as my mother, who was supporting me at that time, said, while you're deciding, maybe you should get employment. And I would go between job interviews to my favorite place, the Central Library in Chicago. And while I was there, a person who had also graduated with me recently saw me and said, hey, Carla, you must be waiting on these library jobs. They're hiring anybody. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, anybody with a bachelor's degree. And I thought, my goodness. And that's when I learned about the profession of librarianship, because they paired me in another storefront branch, south side of Chicago, with a young lady, Judy Zucker, who was going to library school. And I didn't know that you had that opportunity to get a graduate degree in librarianship. And so it just combined so many things for me. And I openly say that it was an accident. So you have been part of efforts to introduce young people, middle schoolers, even before that, to what being a librarian can be.
So you are now in Chicago and you're working there as a deputy commissioner. And when do you run into Michelle Obama and Barack Obama?
A long time after that, because I was children's librarian. I went to library school. I had a stint at the Museum of Science and Industry. That was really something, because that's a special library that for the first time was going to be open to the public. Went off to teach at the University of Pittsburgh and was recruited back to the Chicago Public Library. And that's when I got a chance to meet then Michelle Obama, who was working with the government of Chicago. And in her portfolio was the Chicago Public Library. And I met her first and was really impressed, as you could imagine, by her public service thrust and what she could see the public library doing. And that's how it all started. They were engaged.
Wow. Well, I mean, there are, I'm sure, plenty of stories you could tell us around that, but let's move a little bit further on as you then move on and you're the director at Enoch Pratt, and
Yes.
You're in Baltimore and you're working, and all of a sudden the President Obama calls you and says, would you like to be the Librarian of Congress?
Well, first, Felton, and for everyone listening, there was a process, a nomination. I was nominated, and then I had to have an interview, and talk about the ultimate job interview. when you go to the Oval Office to be interviewed by the President of the United States. Nerves can't even describe what you feel. What was something though, that here was someone that I had known, and now here we are there. And what he wanted though was that same thrust for public service with the world's largest library. And he asked, what could you do to open up this treasure chest to the United States and everyone? And so I was hooked.
So you become the Librarian of Congress, and now you have this challenge in front of you, right?
Yes.
How do you open up the treasure chest?
How do you do it? And one vehicle we're using right now, technology. There are so many in the survey in the question that was asked before we started, and it was about half and half, people who had physically visited the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And what we're embarking on is actually opening up, and we call our website our digital front door. Putting of those 171 million items, we now have 61 million items digitized. Programming, all types of things that will allow people to interact and be part of the Library of Congress that might not ever physically come to the three buildings, one that I'm sitting in now, the Thomas Jefferson building, but they can feel and know that the Library of Congress works for them.
So one of the things I know you've done since I've been there, because I was fortunate to be there one day when you were doing it, as they were running you around with Superman and you were being taken around, is that you really tried to find a way to balance the, the academic side with the reality that, everyday people have to understand that the Library of Congress is their library as well. And so like programs around with Superman and other programs that you've done, who's been the most interesting of the people that you've met since you've been there?
Oh, so many. And you mentioned Superman. We had Linda Carter, who was the original Wonder Woman, here for a program because the Library of Congress has the world's largest collection of comic books. And so we tied it into a local Comic-Con conference. And you can imagine this majestic building and the participants in Comic-Con coming in to look at our first editions. Music programs, when Dolly Parton was here for the Imagination Library, and she was in the Great Hall reading to children from the Coat of Many Colors and broke into song. That I think was one of chills, because the little people that were looking at her, they were just mesmerized, and all of the adults had tears in their eyes. So these types of things, a baseball exhibit, the largest collection of baseball cards in the world. So trying to make these wonderful, wonderful collections relatable and exciting to people who might not know that these are the things that the Library of Congress has, and relate them to everyday life, but also having people think about what they might do for history.
So let's talk about Dolly Parton and the Imagination Library, because it's such a great program. And as Bob talked a little bit about it earlier, the Library of Congress and having Dolly Parton there, what's your thoughts on the Imagination Library?
It's so important. I mentioned in terms of my own life, having books in the home and then learning to go to a library and borrow more books. For young people, especially in those early ages, to one, receive something that's coming in the mail with their name on it. So right there, you've got excitement. And then to have books that you own and that you can write in and you don't have to bring back, and to just be able to have them in your spot is really what helps generate a love of reading. And that program, to be able to have those books coming from birth to 5 years old. Can you imagine the number of books too that you accumulate? So you have your own little library. You can loan books. It gives kids such a sense of ownership and pride to have books there. And that is a gift that I think Ms. Parton gives everyone her gifts of music and creativity. This gift of literacy, though, is just phenomenal.
It truly is. We're very fortunate to partner with the Literacy Cooperative on that here at Cleveland Public Library. And many of the public libraries in the state of Ohio are working on this. And the governor has been a strong proponent of this and has put forward money in the budget to move forward the imagination libraries here with the First Lady. So we're really happy with how this is going. I got behind it because early on, I looked at the research, and the research said one of the most important parts of telling whether a young person is going to be successful or not was the number of books in their personal library, right?
Yes.
This goes directly to that. So let's move there, because I wanted to kind of look at something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Specifically, you mentioned the fact that you have like the largest collections of baseball cards, largest collection of comic books. What other kind of collections are that you have there at the Library of Congress? I mean, in those 178 million items in your collection, there are so many different things, and we just want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell some folks about things that maybe they don't know about.
With things that they can also see online. The Library of Congress just finished digitizing the papers of 23 presidents, from George Washington to Calvin Coolidge, but also putting on and having a special part on the website that has something called Cooking with History. A fun fact, we have Thomas Jefferson's recipe for macaroni that you can pull up and look at. We also have the papers of 36 Supreme Court justices, including Sandra Day O'Connor and Justice Ginsburg. Those items are available, as well as the papers and remembrances of Rosa Parks, the civil rights pioneer. And we have an online exhibit and a physical exhibit of her writings and just her life, including her recipe for peanut butter pancakes. So the Library of Congress has the largest collection of culinary items and cookbooks. It collects in over 470 languages. So any culture that you are interested in or part of, you can find materials even in those own languages. And film things like Jerry Lewis's home movies, as well as iconic films and recordings. So all of these things in different formats are available at the Library of Congress.
So with all of that, 2020 was probably one of the most difficult years for all of us, but for the Library of Congress, I know it's been a tremendous challenge for you as well. I believe it was March 20th of 2020 or somewhere around there that you had to close to the public. How has it been, and what are the challenges you faced with COVID, and what are your as we're starting to roll out of this, what does the future look like for the Library of Congress?
And the Library of Congress had the similar challenges as especially the public libraries, and that I know, and I've talked to my colleagues like you in the public library community, that it was very hard to close your doors when people need you the most. And libraries have usually been that sanctuary, that place, that deficit, the leader, as you put it in much better terms. And so the Library of Congress, what we tried to do was open up that digital front door with the website and present workshops, all types of programming that could offer teachers ready-made lesson plans, webinars, blogs, activities for families. That Cooking with History became very popular because families were having to deal with virtual learning and having activities, as well as reaching out to congressional members throughout the country and being part of their town halls to let people know that here are resources and activities. Some even fun, like Citizen DJ, where you can mention those recordings and films. You can mix and match and make your own creative output, but really making sure that we made everyone aware as much as we could that the Library of Congress was and is a resource for them, and connecting with the public library systems and being part of activities.
So along with it being a very difficult year around COVID, it also was a challenging year when we kind of looked at it from the issue of equity and access. And this has been an issue that the Library of Congress has had to face, and came on with that issue at the forefront of your leadership. And I know that's been something you've really worked on, and you've really been, as when you were the president of ALA, that was a big part of what you were doing around that. The library profession struggles around diversity and equity. What are your thoughts where we are here in 2021?
What the pandemic has done for libraries in particular is made it very clear that they are opportunity centers in communities, rural, urban areas, and every community, that when the libraries have to close their doors, they are sometimes the only places that people can get online and have high-speed internet access to get their vaccination appointments, to do the virtual learning. And so it has really been an opportunity for people to see how important those public libraries, they knew they had been, but now it's even clearer that libraries play an important role, and librarians and library staff members, in providing services that people need. Entertainment, yes, all of those types of things, but vital, vital services. The library, Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, just received a grant to put antennas on branches to provide free internet access to the communities and the houses around the branches. So, and I know that you're doing similar things and making sure, loaning laptops, loaning materials that people can use, hotspots, turning those mobile vans and bookmobiles that people remember into internet access points, driving up into communities. So I'd like to ask you, Felton, what have you all been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been one of the struggles, as you've said, and I'll just take a few minutes because nobody ever turns a presentation on to hear the moderator speak, right? Everybody's right now, I didn't come here to hear Felton talk, I came here for Dr. Hayden. But I think one of the things that we've been really pleased at is in the city of Cleveland that everyone has recognized that this is an issue where it's got to be all hands on deck, right? Everybody, we understood that our kids were really, really important, and they didn't have what they needed to be able to do the work that they need. You know, many folks didn't know that Cleveland was the 4th least connected city in the nation. And
really,
because of that, we had to all come together and figure out what were we going to do. And so a collaborative of 80 different organizations came together. The first piece of that being to make sure that every child that was in our Cleveland schools were one-to-one. They had some way of being able to get internet access, and then they had a tablet or a laptop or something so that they could do their homework at home. And we've gotten to that point, right? And so we're doing that. And as you said, we've been doing everything possible that we could provide access, bumping up our signals, checking out hotspots, and doing a lot. But there is still so much needed for our community members, and there's still a lot of work that we're working on to do that. But with that said, I see that being done in cities all across the United States and libraries all across the United States. And I'm sure there are always library directors who are on this, who are like, they're not talking about what I'm doing here. And Belinda Cervantes in California and others who I saw on this list who are like, but I think the great thing is that public libraries are really have committed to being a part of this. And where maybe in the past, we kind of look at it, well, that's not our role. I think public libraries have stepped up to say that is our role.
And that's where the Library of Congress, and that's why I wanted you to talk about it, connects to and has made even more of an effort to connect to the public library systems, because all of the things we put in our digital front door, if people don't have access to them, they can't get those materials. And so that network of libraries, so you have the National Library, the largest library in the world, it's putting all of these things together. However, that network of local access is vitally important. So I want everyone to know that the Library of Congress is part of that network and wants to do even more to be included.
So let's talk a little bit about your building, because one of the questions that Bob asked at the beginning was how many people had been to the Library of Congress, and eventually the Library of Congress is going to be reopened and people are going to be able to come and visit you. What are the things that you're so proud of in the building? Not saying that looking at the background that you have right behind you and where you are, but it's a beautiful building.
And it's the main part of a 3-building complex. So this is the Thomas Jefferson building, built in 1897, the first federal building in Washington, D.C. to have electricity. So when you visit, you'll see lots of sconces and exposed light bulbs, because there was some pride in that. It also was and has been called one of the most beautiful buildings in Washington, D.C. It was built entirely by American craftspeople, and it was modeled on an Italian palace. It is truly, truly beautiful, to show that in this country, we build palaces not to royalty, but to the idea of an informed citizenry and knowledge. And so when you come into this beautiful building, you will see one of 3 Gutenberg Bibles in the world. The other 2, Bibliothèque Nationale in France and at the British Library. And this Gutenberg Bible you could see here. You will see things that are on display temporarily, like our women's suffrage exhibit that we had to close right before. Started the papers of Susan B. Anthony, the Ida B. Wells, Mary Church Terrell, and an exhibit on Rosa Parks. So the physical, there's another building, the James Madison building right across the street, where you can go into the manuscript division. That's where the film department, photography, and another building, the Adams building with science and technology. The Library of Congress has the papers of Orville and Wilbur Wright. And you could see those types of drawings. So the complex and being able to be in this beautiful building, but also to have access to the other 2 buildings is what we really want. Those 2 million people that visited right before, the year before the pandemic, were coming from all over the country and the world.
So before we turn it over to question and answers, I wanted to just take a little time to talk to you about what you want to see for the future of the Library of Congress as you're moving forward, because you are in one of those positions that is, there's this tremendous challenge of the fact that you have different administrations come on while you remain in office, right? And so how you look at your future isn't affected by whoever becomes the new president, but I know that you probably hear from them in different ways.
I think people will be heartened to know that there is great respect for the Library of Congress. And in fact, even though the Librarian of Congress is nominated by the president, it has to be confirmed, and that was said in the intro, by Congress, the Senate, in fact. So it is adjunct or part of and started as the Library for Congress, and now it's the Library for Congress and the people Congress serves. The term of the Librarian of Congress is designed to make sure that it is able to be flexible with different administrations, so it is not dependent on that. And that's where I think the strength of the library lies, that it is the people's library. It's like you're the people's university. It is the national library, and it serves everyone.
All right, so I think they're going to start harvesting the questions. And we have one that just popped up that's really, really interesting. The question is, I'm a big fan of the movie National Treasure. Tell us about the Book of Secrets and any forbidden rooms at the library.
Well, that National Treasure, and I tell you, we have a lot of fun with that because that's one of the most asked questions. Where is the Book of Secrets? Does it exist? And I can tell you that there are treasures here that we are going to make sure that we have. In fact, there's a treasures library that's a treasures gallery that we're developing, and we might be able to showcase a facsimile. So we're working on that, but that is a question that people ask.
All right, so here is our second question. Who decides and what is the process for determining new items to go into the Library of Congress?
This is a good recruitment opportunity. We have a very robust collection development department with librarians who select basically about 12 to 15,000 items every working day to go into the collection. And they are specialists in every area and so many languages. So there is a department that selects the materials.
All right. Oh, this is one from Jeff Conyers. Were you finished with that answer?
Oh yeah, that's
I just would double check. I don't want to.
They want you to know that they're the department. So there's no more to add to that.
All right, this one is from Jeff Conyers, president of Dollywood Foundation. Says, Dr. Hayden, thank you for joining us today. Does the Library of Congress hold an item or two that is personally especially meaningful to you, and why?
I'd have to say the papers of Frederick Douglass, one of my idols when you think about literacy and the importance of literacy. As he famously said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. And to be able to look at his handwritten notes that say that, and also his reflections on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, those items speak to me personally and professionally.
So I want to ask you a question to that, because there are so many different collections that are there. What is something that surprised you that you didn't think you would have on there? Maybe it was just
hair, H-A-I-R, hair. Now there was the cane of Charles Dickens, the vial from Sigmund Freud's papers. That's just the diaries of Clara Barton, who had depressive episodes and didn't know how she would do it, but the hair. So the Library of Congress has 5 pieces in different stages of Thomas Jefferson's hair. And it's in this acid-free box, and you can look. We also have one of only 3.
Is there a reason for having Thomas Jefferson's hair?
There's always a reason. Okay. When you have the papers, and remember, there was a time that was what in memory of, and people collected hair and put them in lockets, and having that. And also a piece, only one of 3 identified pieces of Ludwig Beethoven's hair. And there are a couple of locks that are attributed to other famous people. So to have those museum quality items were surprising to me.
That's very
And we
interesting.
will have those things on display in this new Treasures Gallery. Well, it's a rotating gallery. It's open in a couple of years. And the thing that was touching, I'm from Illinois, and that really brings history home, the contents of Abraham Lincoln's pockets the night he was assassinated. They have been on display at Ford's Theater. They were on loan for a time, and the library occasionally will display them, but that makes you think there's a button that was there, and you think about, wow, what a human thing. Your button, you know, you loosens, you take it out and you put it in your pocket, and that was in his jacket.
All right, we have more questions. What were the toughest or most surprising or most interesting interview questions you were asked by President Obama?
What would you do to open up that treasure chest? He mentioned that he had seen the contents of Abraham Lincoln's pockets, the draft of the Declaration of Independence in Thomas Jefferson's hand with footnotes or side notes, BF for Benjamin Franklin and that. And he went on to some of the things that he had seen and probably as president and getting a special tour. And so the nerves I mentioned, of course, they were there, but when he asked that, it really was like, okay, this is about more than just managing all of these items. It's about access to these items. And that was the question and the key to helping me get over, you know, oh my God, look who I'm talking to, but this is really the mission.
So being nominated by President Obama, I mean, you were in a situation you still had to get through Congress and Senate and whatever. All of us were like during that period of time, we're like just, you know, so supportive
Yes.
of you, whatever. But you know, that whole process is one that sometimes I would assume makes you think, is this really what I want to do? Did you ever have that wavering thought around like, this is a lot for this job?
When I thought about it was when you have your neighbors coming up to you and saying, are you okay? Someone just asked me about you and put a thing under the door. You go through an entire vetting process. What helped me though with that was the fact that mission and being able to, if I can get through this, and having a pretty dull life helps too. You know, it's not much there. But having that, knowing that this process, once you get through it, that you are able to move on to what is the work and what can you do? And being able to sit here now and talk about a treasures gallery and a youth center in this building that's going to be for the young and the young at heart, to get them involved with making and history come alive and thinking about it, that was the payoff for it. Now, I do have to say, the process and all of the library community that supported, I had, when I would go around to the interviews with the senators, because it was Senate confirmation, they were very aware of the library community and had been told that I had the support of the library community. One even said, those librarians, boy, you know.
You don't mess with the librarians. No mess with the librarians. Let's go back to questions. I want to come back to that in a little bit, but as our society has evolved, positions on race, LGBTQ rights, gender, et cetera, have also evolved. What is the library's approach to dealing with content that has been deemed inappropriate or even inaccurate in today's world?
Well, the Library of Congress has just received a wonderful grant from the Andrew Mellon Foundation. And the title of the program is Of the People Widening the Path. And it will allow the Library of Congress to work with communities, even give out grants to community organizations throughout the country to get stories and the histories of underrepresented communities, to give paid, and I love the paid fellowships and scholarships to, and internships to students, college and university students from underrepresented groups, to mine the collections and work directly in communities, and then a digital futures program. And that will be working with people who are doing really interesting and good work in communities to tell all stories that need to be told. And so we're part of I think, a group of institutions that are seeing our responsibility to make sure that all voices are heard.
Good. So I think we're looking here for the next question coming up here. Will you discuss the impact and relevance of the Library of Congress, the Library of Congress Young Ambassadors Program?
Oh, the Youth Ambassador was started several years ago, and the Library of Congress has a position that allows a well-known and well-respected youth author to work with libraries and communities to stress the importance of reading. And right now, we're very fortunate that Jason Reynolds, the middle school and young adult librarian, I made him a librarian, young adult author, award-winning. Oh, he is wonderful. And he has a program now called Grab a Mic, Tell Your Story. He is doing so much virtually. And before that, this is during my tenure, I got to appoint Jacqueline Woodson. So these youth ambassadors go into communities, interact with young people, and encourage them not only to read, but to create.
So I wanted to ask you a question around what kind of advice you would give to the public librarians that are out there who are, working in communities. And you kind of hit on it, but I wanted to make sure specifically, because there are a lot of public librarians on this Zoom call here who want to get to know about how you took just that kind of accidental librarian time and turned it into being the Librarian of Congress, right? What shaped you along the way?
The public service aspect, and especially as you move into positions that allow you to be at the table in your community, to when there's a city council meeting or a cabinet meeting of different departments, you're going to have public works, you're going to have all of these different departments, and the library should be at the table and be able to say, oh, when they hear and speak up and volunteer the library, because what happens in those settings many times is they're not thinking about the library as a part of the service structure that they are involved in. Section 8 housing, for instance, a renewal for that. That happened when I was in Baltimore. We're at the table, we're hearing the housing department talk about it, and it was going to be a 2-week and re-enrollment program, totally online. And when you think about that, where are the people going to go to get online, to have time enough to sit at a computer, high speed to do that and have help? So we knew right away, and we said, we will be ready at 10 o'clock when the thing starts. And sure enough, people were lined up, and the librarians had already examined and knew what the form was, had them queued up, some special computers right there that were just going to be for that. and we're ready. And so that's something that I think we need to be more assertive about. I know a lot of the people who are involved are already assertive and saying, yes, think of us, flu shots, vaccinations, all of that. We are polling places, but just to be part of the conversation about lifting up communities.
Well, I think we have, and I'll make sure that everybody knows that if you have one final question to get in for Dr. Hayden, make sure you put it in the queue. I do have this one because this is a really important one that was typed in or put in the question answer. What's the purpose of the Library of Congress initially? What was the purpose initially for the Library of Congress?
The Library of Congress was started in 1800, not long after Congress was started, as a reference library, a collection of books, and they were mainly law books and legal treatises to help members of Congress do their work. And over time, it evolved into a collection, as Thomas Jefferson said, that there's no subject to which a member of Congress should not have occasion to refer. And so it expanded beyond legal books to all types of things, especially with his collection in 1812. And then after about the 1870s, with the Copyright Administration coming to the Library of Congress, the collection grew even more to serve not only Congress, but the people that Congress serves. And that means it's a reference library for everyone. So that's the purpose.
As you can imagine now, everybody is sitting in their questions, but this is one that I wanted to ask you as your last question, but I will ask you now because I want to make sure we have time to get this question in. What do you want your legacy to be?
That the Library of Congress, I know, I'm old, but you know, that is something you think about it, that I was able to make sure that the Library of Congress continued to be that source for everyone and that they could see themselves and learn about others with the resources of the Library of Congress.
Now, that's a very humble legacy answer. Because I know that's who you are as a person. But I know though you have a number of years still to be there at the Library of Congress. And I know you are thinking not only about how you leave the Library of Congress, but how you leave the library profession. And you've done so much for the library profession as a whole. What do you want to see your legacy be for the library profession as well?
When I mentioned those paid internships and scholarships for underrepresented groups, we already have started a program with Howard University right here in Washington, D.C., and expanding it to HBCUs, that we get more and more and see more people of color and from all walks and parts of life interested in not only history, but helping people tell their stories, and that we have history detectives and archivists and digital and all of these things, and you're going to see that reflected in people who are making sure, as they say, that history never stops and that everyone is part of it.
Well, let me just add one, and we still have questions coming in, but I'll take this personal aside to, one of my legacy things for you was, I can't remember which of the shows it was, but one day waking up and seeing you like on Good Morning America when you were president of American Library Association. And I was like, what in the world? A librarian is on Good Morning America? And that was, I was just like a branch manager in a library at that point in time. And that was how you inspired so many of us librarians to see that librarianship is going to be something different.
Right. And when people see that, they have the same reaction in a different way. A librarian, it kind of wakes you up. What's the librarian saying? Because we have one of those stereotypes that's very strong
Yes.
And people, but they do trust us, and that stereotype, I think, works for us.
So let's go back to the questions here. How do you know, or how do you measure how the Library of Congress is serving the public?
Well, we're definitely looking at collecting information and data about who uses us. So surveys and trying to make sure that we allow people to tell us what they think about the services that they've received, also what they think we should be doing. And so we are even going to be expanding that more with the technology tools that we have available. And it's something that all libraries, though, are challenged with, because there's the balance between privacy and access, and looking at records or looking at different information. And I'm sure some of my colleagues that are listening now know that we have to make sure that we get the information, but that we're not portraying people's interest in whatever they're looking at too.
So we have a question on how many new items are brought into the Library of Congress each year, and how do you manage the collection?
I mentioned that 12 to 15,000 items are selected from the copyright deposits every working day. And that's the basic input that the Library of Congress has in terms of selecting things to go into the collections. And then there are 6 overseas offices that the library has, where you have specialists in different regions. There's office in Cairo and Islamabad, Rio de Janeiro, Jakarta. And so you have people who are collecting materials in those languages and of the cultures there. And you also have the working with donors about their papers. You mentioned those Supreme Court justices and things like that. So they're materials that are coming in that are gifts and of purchase and gifts of someone in terms of legacy. So a variety of ways and types of items that are coming in.
So we have one more question, but I want to try to squeeze in one last question for you. So the first one is from our community, and we want to make sure everybody gets their last question in. If you could change anything about the Library of Congress, what would you change if there were no limits? What would you like to see stay forever?
Oh, well, we're working on that. We're working on that. More and more of the items being available online and being digitized. Even some of the things that, when I mentioned hair, you know, how can you make that interesting that people could see things online? So if there were no limits, we would be able to put so many more things online.
So in my last question for you would be, I know I personally work with the Literacy Cooperative here in Cleveland. I know of their great work, and they're working to make young people have access and the ability to read all across the city of Cleveland and in the county here as well. But for you, what can you share with folks? You know, because it's hard work. I mean, all of us who are doing this work, it's very hard work. What kind of last statement of support can you give to the Literacy Cooperative and those who are supporting them?
I would encourage the people who are involved with literacy programs to apply for the Library of Congress's Literacy Awards. And we have expanded the criteria and the scope of those awards now to include efforts during this pandemic. What have people been able to do? And if they could, because we know it's been very difficult with donations that haven't been able to come into programs. So I would encourage them to go on the library's website, loc.gov, look under literacy, and they'll see a number of opportunities for direct support.
Thanks. Well, we want to thank you here.
Oh,
and
thank you.
for all of us who have been a part of this, for sharing your time. We know your time is extremely valuable and very limited.
All
So
of
to take
us.
the time to share with us, we were very much appreciated. And I know this has been really valuable to so many of us here. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to Emily Campbell, who is the chair of the board for the Literacy Cooperative. Emily, close us out.
Thank you. Thank you, Felton, and thank you, Dr. Hayden, so much for being with us this afternoon, and for both of you for this great conversation. You know, it's a wonderful reminder that libraries are more than just books. As Felton mentioned, I'm Emily Campbell, the board chair for the Literacy Cooperative and associate director at the Center for Community Solutions. You know, this conversation got me thinking about my memories of libraries and being a child, and I was laughing so hard because while other families were going to the beach or to the mountains on vacation, my family were going to historic sites and state capitals, and I have seen so much historic hair. As a child, we got to visit the Library of Congress as tourists. I even had the opportunity to do a little bit of research there. And the National Archives when I was in high school. And it was truly one of the coolest experiences for this nerdy teenager. So I will say, if you haven't had the opportunity to visit when things open up, please do. And don't forget about the treasure that we have here locally. The Cleveland Public Library is a beautiful building with amazing collections right here close to home. Thank you so much, Dr. Hayden, for your role in maintaining our national historic memory and preserving our democracy. Thank you to PNC and to all the sponsors of this event, and to all of you for participating today. So while this event is a celebration, it's an opportunity to learn, it's Read Across America celebration, it's also a fundraiser. Each of you has the chance to make a difference and spread the word about the importance of literacy. Of course, as a nonprofit, the Literacy Cooperative relies on the generosity of donors to sustain our work. So please consider making a donation in honor of this event today at literacycooperative.org/donate-RAA for Donate Read Across America, and you can see it there on your screen. Your donation can help build stronger brains, promote a level of books and reading among children and adults, and support the important partnerships that the Literacy Cooperative has with Cleveland Public Library and other libraries in our community. So thank you in advance for your generosity. Finally, we hope to see you in September for the 6th annual CLE-Bee, the Cleveland Corporate Spelling Bee. We'd ask that you encourage your companies and organizations to sponsor a team. The Center for Community Solutions is already signed up. And now that the pandemic, it seems to be receding, who knows? We might be able to get together in person in September, so I hope to see you there. Thank you again to our speakers today, to our sponsors, and to all of you for your participation. Have a great day.